You'd be surprised to know that some of the most successful women of our time face challenges just like you and I do.
Hi, I'm Amber.
And I'm Lisa. We're authors of the book Leading Ladies. Discover your God-grown strategy for success.
We invite you to join us in an honest, messy bun conversation about the things we'd rather keep hidden in our lives.
Some of those things can keep us from moving forward in purpose.
So grab a cup of something delicious, kick off your shoes, and hang out with us for the next 30 minutes. Good morning, everyone. We're excited to be with you for another hot coffee chat. It's hot outside, but I have cold here in my cup because it's been around 102 degrees in Missouri, and that is not a fun place to be. We have our amazing guest, Andrea Tomassi. I call her Andi, so I'm going to just call you Andi. Is that okay?
Everybody calls me Andi. Yes. Please do.
We've had an amazing conversation today because we started our conversation with dogs.
They did it. Trade in dogs that we all own. And it seemed like Doodles rule in this meeting right now. Sorry, Amber, Doodles rule right here.
I think I'm going to have to get a doodle just to be in the trend of doodles. Probably, I think doodles have been the ultimate dog accessory I've seen at the park. I'm wondering if doodles will oversell the Labrador retrievers. Labradoodles, maybe.
They sure are sweet.
Yes. So, Andi, thank you for being with us today. We're talking about an important topic. Andi, having been in ministry and walking through a divorce in the middle of it and having everything feel like it stopped and trying to rebuild from a very significant grieving process. So I just really thank you for being here today and being willing to be vulnerable in this conversation, because it's a tough conversation to have.
For those of you that have already started to read the book, it seems like part of the ongoing message is, what do you do with yourself when life happens? Unexpected things maybe we saw coming down the road, but still kept believing and hoping it wouldn't quite upset the apple cart of our life. How do we somehow pivot and put ourselves back on the road of doing what we know we're supposed to do for God, as well as those things that give us life and re-energize us and give us meaning and hope? So today we wanted to talk about that. Andrea is a grandmother. You can't tell that by looking at her. She has 7 grandbabies. She has me beat. I'm going to have to get the word here, as if that has anything to do with me. And she also has done some award-winning writing in a book with her cousin Cynthia Cavanaugh, the Live Bold book. And Andi, I know that's when I met you. I met you when we were at a conference mutually. Amber and I, you, Cynthia, some other ladies. And I remember meeting you there and all the excitement that was around that project. But life, obviously, as we just mentioned, took a turn for you after the Live Bold book was launched and you guys were walking through that process. Can you tell us a little bit about how life took that turn?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be something painful to talk about this side of heaven. I was married for 33 years, met my husband when I was 18. It was a very high and a very low, walking the same path where you're so excited and this vision has come to fruition. And writing with Cynthia is just, she's a great person anyway, but being my blood and my cousin in honor of our grandmother and my mom and just where our family came from, it's just an honor to write with her. Sometimes God puts these things in our path that we have no control over. And he constantly, even today, 2 years out of this August will be 2 years out of my divorce. He's constantly showing me eyes of fear. Just like when we take our eyes off of him, I can start to spiral and go downhill super quickly. So during that time, it was super important to me to, one, give myself permission to grieve. And I can just tell you ladies this right now, don't let anybody tell you there's a time limit on, because there's not, and everybody's different. and it's okay. And you have to give yourself grace. There's so many times I would sit and say, I should be further along in the process. Yes. For a lot of people, when they divorce, I see them on Facebook have these divorce parties where they have this celebration with their friends. And it just wasn't like that for me. It was a grieving. This is not something that I wanted. This was not something I wanted for my life, for my children, for my grandchildren. I wanted a godly legacy for our family, but fortunately it didn't turn out that way. I can still give them a godly legacy. I don't have to be married to do that. So I just want to throw that out there, that we still have a huge impact on our grandchildren and our children, even as adults, through this process.
I want to ask the question, when you're in the middle of that where your heart is just broken and you're trying to put one foot in front of the other. And like you said, grief doesn't have a timeline. Grief comes and goes as it wants. And a lot of times we have no control over that. What were you able to do to keep the focus? Like you said, eyes up here, especially when you were fresh coming from that separation and divorce, because you said you're 2 years out. That's a long time of walking through that process. What did you do? What things did God do to bring you through that?
I say that I'm 2 years out, but in all actuality, it's a little less than 1 year out, maybe close to 10, 11 months. And I say that because we did try to reconcile after our divorce. I don't know if in my mind I needed to have a finality of it, but I saw changes in him that checked off all the boxes for me. And you got to understand, in my mind, I've been praying for this to happen for 9 years, almost 10 years. So finally, when it did happen, I'm like, oh my gosh, God answered my prayers. This is it. And when I walked into it, it turned out exactly how our divorce ended. And my heart was even broken more than the first time. But I struggled with it for a while. And I said to God, why would you have me walk back into something if you knew it was never right? Like, why would you awaken that love again in my heart? And you know what he told me? He said, because you never asked me to go back. You just ran full throttle back into something that I removed you from for your own protection. And you ran back, never asked me. And that was a big eye-opening thing for me, which I am carrying now. It's been almost a year. So in this last year of my life, I am very in tune to something. I think we have to ask God for these big things. Should I buy a house? And it's not. It's in every little tiny things that we do when we include him in those. And so that's the lesson that I have learned in this last year of just because it's good doesn't mean it's from God. Just because somebody made the changes and it looks great on the outside, God knows everybody's heart. God knows his heart. God knows my heart. God knows your heart.
Yeah.
It was a tough lesson to learn and a painful lesson to learn. But I am so grateful that I learned that lesson, because that moving forward, it's easier to see red flags. Now, if I ever start dating again, if God ever brings anybody else back into my life, I'm going to have that discernment to say, let's have a chat right now before we ever go out for coffee or we ever do anything. Like, you need to tell me, because I don't want to put one extra foot in front of the other if this is not a road that you want me to go down. So he's going to be in every single decision like that one before, because my heart can't deal with that again.
As I think about this, and while I don't want to make this an expose on divorce, but I do want to ask the question, in the church, we obviously seem to put a stigma on that. We seem to walk around with this mindset that it's something we don't want. And of course, it's not God's best for us. So when it happens to us, when we end up walking through that, the enemy, of course, wants to come and make us feel like we are nothing. We are unqualified. We are not covered by God's grace any longer. We don't have anything to offer. How does that work when you know you're called? Know there's still something out there for you to do. How do you pivot and turn yourself from all those voices in your head that the enemy just plays those tapes over and over again, and you battle? How do you fight against those thoughts?
I think for me, there's a deep respect and love for myself today that even a year ago, I don't think I had. I think I was getting close. I think the first year started it and this last year finished it. Because when you have that deep love and respect for yourself, number one, you are able to set healthy boundaries, right? Because we are supposed to guard our heart. And let me tell you, I had no idea how to set it down, guard my heart, which is, I think that's why I was hurt so deeply. However, I remember a few years ago when Cynthia and I spoke at a conference for Rosalinda back in Virginia. And it was 5 years ago because I remember at that time we were in a great place and I'm speaking from the stage talking about God can save your marriage and you just need to just trust him and wait on his timing. God's in the middle of it kind of thing. And as soon as I got divorced, it's funny how Satan popped up that talk into my head and said, what are you going to do now? You just spoke to all these women about, woohoo, what are you going to do when you go back? And now you have to tell them you're divorced. Like they're going to think you're a fraud.
Yeah.
And I think because of the love that I have for myself, immediately, like not even 30 seconds went by and I heard in my deep spirit, God speak to me and say, Andrea, 5 years ago, you were only able to speak to 50% of those women whose marriages were saved. Because we all know 50% end in divorce. Now, when you go back, you can speak to all of them. You're going to be able to relate to 100% of them. You can speak in the beginning about, because when it was good and God did redeem during that time, I'm not going to take away from the great thing that God did do because he did, but we all have free will to change that. And in the second season is, no, it didn't work out, but we can still walk in grace and God still has a plan and he still has a story and he still has a purpose. And I feel like it would be a great talk because you've experienced each of them, the heartbreak and the reconciliation.
Well, and you can also speak to the idea of evaluating, is this a healthy situation to go back to? And that's a brave place to be. And I know that women like you and Lisa TeKirst, who's been through these kind of situations, and now we're seeing the vulnerability of women like you come through and really be honest. That's a life-changing ministry because it is something that God repairs circumstances. He repairs us, but he doesn't necessarily let the circumstances that were broken continue on.
He takes those situations and he walks with us through them. We're not alone.
Yeah.
The child of God.
Never.
And he redeems those moments so that we can utilize the worst of our pain, the worst of our brokenness to bring him glory. And somehow he continues to heal us in those processes.
Oh, 100%. And you know what else, Lisa, I've realized is that in this last year when it's not that I question, but I don't want to use that because I don't think we should ever question because he always wants his best for us, even if it doesn't feel like it. But my question for God was that, again, when he brought me back into that, why did he bring me there? It's because I didn't do my due diligence as going to my father, asking him. He clearly removed me from something. And I went back, number one. And number two, I felt like God press upon my heart where I'm taking you. He can't go. And that could be any relationship, a friend.
Exactly.
It could be anything that, I think God brings people into your life for seasons. It doesn't mean they're going to be there forever. I think that they play a purpose in our life for a season, just as we do. But to continue on our journey, they're going to take the exit and they're not meant to stay on the freeway and go further than that. And it's a painful process because you marry someone you think forever and ever, or you have a lifelong friend or a friend that you've known for a couple of years. And God's just saying, this is toxic. You don't see it now, Andrea, but it will stop you from the plans that I have for your life. And honestly, I was telling a friend the other day, I said, God could have come in and redeemed my marriage, my family, reconciled it all, kids coming over, spending the night, jumping on the bed, Mimi and Papa there, just enjoying, embracing that life that I wanted. He could have done that. And I could have written another book or had an impact on his kingdom. However, the way I played in my head is I feel like God said, yes, I could have done that. But what you can do over here, if I take it away and don't give it to you, is far greater than if I would have answered your prayer. And honestly, our families, our children, our grandkids, and all the things we have in this world are just, extra. What we're here for is to serve. And what we're here for is to be his hands and feet. And what we're here for is to show people who Jesus is. And if he thinks that taking that away is going to have a greater impact, then honestly, I feel like I have to take one for the team. That's not whether I want to do it or not. Of course, I want to do it, but whether it hurts or not, or whether I agree with it or not.
It reminds me of a pin that I wrote in my journal. It says, and I put a picture with it of a woman carrying a baby away from a burning trailer. It says,
Wow.
what things are you looking back towards that would consume you if you wouldn't move away from them?
That's so good, Amber. Yeah.
And
You don't see it at the time. We don't see, because you think fighting for your marriage and not giving up and honoring your vow is a good thing. But I think there's a time when God also says, enough, no more. This is my daughter and I have big plans for her. And if she continues to go down that road, she's not going to be I'm sure there are a lot of people that will argue with that statement. I'm sure there would be, but this is it works for me. And this is what I feel that God has spoke over my life. It may not be the same for everybody, but this is how I navigate it, as God's not going to take away something like that or not reconcile something unless he has something bigger or greater for me.
I think it's important for us all to keep in perspective that God speaks to each of us individually, for us, for our circumstance. And I do believe that God allows us to sometimes reframe the deepest heartaches and broken spaces so that we can move through them and function through them. And I believe that is part of his healing process. I know I've personally been in experiences where he gave me a way to reframe to get through that moment. And then a little bit further down the road, reframed again. I feel like it's all part of our walk into healing and growth, leaning on him. When children are young, we don't describe to them what the actual act of sex is because they're not going to comprehend. They're not in a space to understand it. They have to get through to a certain space before we can give them, no, it's not just the store, again, this and that. And I'm using a very different scenario. But even for us in our walk, I feel like sometimes we have to move from space to space. And sometimes our healing can only take us to this point so that we can actually dwell in that healing spot to move us down the road to another reframe where we can get a little deeper into that healing. So I feel like we need to keep it in perspective for anyone that's listening.
Charles Stanley was my greatest. He has spoken so much truth over my life over the last 10 years. And one thing that he mentioned in a sermon one time was everybody thinks closeness to God is a feeling. It's just something that we feel. I feel close to, but it's not. Closeness to God has everything to do with obedience. It has everything to do with obedience. In one of the chapters of Cynthia, my book, Live Bold, it talks about a mom, two scenarios. A mom comes home from work and she gives strict orders to her kids or rules to her kids. No PlayStation, no friends over, get your homework done, do your chores. She comes home and it's the complete opposite. House is a mess. There's popcorn everywhere. Dogs running all around. Friends are over. Their homework's not done. And she's upset. And there's looking to be a little riffraff in the house for the evening. Next scenario is she comes home. Kids did their homework. Everything's done. House is clean. They may have picked a couple roses out, put them on the table, started dinner. And she's, gosh, they listen. We're going to sit down and we're going to have a great evening. Let's popcorn. I feel like God is the same way. It's not that he his love doesn't change for us. But I feel like there are times when we aren't obedient, like disappointment. Oh, I told you don't do this. And it's the closeness that we don't feel. But when we do obey, he's, yes, Andy, yes, yes. That's the closeness that you feel. At least I feel when I know that I did something that I maybe didn't want to do or that was painful. I always say, you asked me a few questions back, what do I say to myself to get out of that and to move forward, to take the next step? And what I have always said to myself is, you can't go with what you feel. You have to go with what you know. So let's say there's Eagle Road, which I live off of, and let's say there's 10-mile, couple exits down. It's like your feelings are on one, but what you know to be truth is two exits up. And if you just keep driving and keep going with what you know, which is what God says and what the Bible says, your feelings will eventually get there. Even if you're going 5 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, sometimes you go 80 miles, you will eventually get there because the truth is what we stand on. And so when my mind starts to spiral and my feelings start getting out of control, I just say to myself, okay, I'm feeling this right now, and I embrace it and I deal with it. And I don't stuff it down, but I say, I'm not going to feel like this forever. And it doesn't change what God says about me and what the truth is.
What you said about coming home, I think the mother's heart inevitably shows gratitude for people doing what they to make God grateful by doing what you're saying you're going to do. He's looking for, you made this easy for me.
Right.
Yeah.
You made this easy for me, and you made it easy for you.
Right.
Because I think God, he's wanting to make things easier if we would just listen, be obedient, and be okay if things are a bit uncomfortable and they don't get an immediate fix.
Andrea, I want to talk a little bit about your contribution to Leading Ladies.
Yeah. Congratulations. By the way, you guys, I am just in awe of what God is doing with that book. I'm so proud of you both. It's beautiful.
We're very excited, but we're also realizing that we didn't get there on our own. Ladies like you contributed. You all were just willing, every single one from the very first page to the last page, were very willing to contribute something real and valuable that women can pick up and read and apply to their own lives where they are. And your story of coming back, walking through, pursuing, getting in there, being tenacious, fighting through these moments of life is a story that we wanted women to hear. And so if we can introduce women to you and the strength that you can give them, having gone through a process that has grown you and helped God to use you more, we wanted to do that. You contributed a letter. And for those that don't know, the book is split up, of course, by chapters, but we also have letters that are like in between every 3 to 4 chapters. They're a little shorter, but they are full of powerful words. The letter that Andi contributed is called A Letter to the Sisters Who Have Been Torn Down in Purpose. And I'm going to quote just a few lines from this. It says, after heartache, following a divorce and reconciliation that never came, he is birthing a fresh vision in me. Just as I am unforsaken, this is his word to you. His glory rebuilds his temple. You can be assured he is not finished with you. So come into agreement with his plan again, knowing he is faithful. Your father is calling you forward, sister. Come out of the stronghold and walk confidently, knowing he designed you with purpose. You have a rich legacy and inheritance as a daughter of the king. And then I like this line. You just say, fight, sister.
Yeah.
Strong and courageous. Grow your influence today so you can build a lasting legacy for tomorrow. I want to thank you for contributing those words. Yeah, there's more to the letter in here for anyone that picks it up and reads it. But I also want to make sure people know that they can learn more about you. You can go to our Leading Ladies website and you'll see Andi's picture there as one of our leading ladies. You can click her link and it will take you to ways to contact her, learn more about her. And we want to make sure that you recognize that Andi's story could be life-giving for you. So we want you to reach out to her. Also, look at the Live Bold book that she wrote with her cousin, Cynthia. I'll ask one final question for you. And I know we touched on it earlier, but if Andi today, the whole unforsaken Andi, could look back and speak to Live Bold Andi after this conversation of just reliving these moments, what do you think you would say to her? Is there any way you could prepare her? Is there any way you would want to? What would you want to say to her if you could say one thing?
Oh gosh. The two words that come to my brain, my cousin Cynthia said to me the day that we decided that we were going to publish a book. I think we actually signed the contract to publish, and she lives in Washington and I was in California at the time. We were editing, sending things back and forth. And I remember her saying to me, hold on, this is going to be a wild ride. I feel like God's going to do something big, like hold on. And I think I would tell her to just hold on. Cindy telling me to hold on was a metaphor, I think, for something exciting, like a roller coaster. Hold on. And I think I would tell her, hold on, because an earthquake's coming, and go stand underneath a doorway or something. Just hold on. You're not going to die. You're not going to fall apart. You're going to get through this. Just hold on, because a wave is coming and you're going to ride it, even though you don't know how to surf, but you're not going to drown.
Yeah. So true.
So beautiful. Andi, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you have an appointment you have to get to, so we're going to say goodbye to you. And I want to thank you for just being transparent and sharing this story with us. I have someone very dear to me in my life right now, walking through what you've walked through and what you've said today. I know it's hard to be transparent sometimes, but I am so grateful that you have been. And I'm praying for everyone that gets a chance to listen to this, that might be going through this or knows somebody who's gone through this, that this message today, although it is very compact and short, will give them hope and help them walk through this journey for themselves.
And I want to just add to that, whoever is watching this, know that God is ready to reignite you in purpose, even though you may not feel like it.
Amen.
Because you have to realign what you're feeling right in this moment to God's truth. And He wants to push you to something. Don't put shutters up on life and stay in that stronghold. So have a conversation with God and be willing to listen. Be willing to listen to what He's actually saying in that moment, because you're not meant to stay in the dark place.
No.
He wants to reignite you. And also want to say, you can connect with Andi on her Facebook page, and she has some encouragement there. I love the encouragement that you put out, one pin at a time, and it's amazing. So thank you for doing that.
Of course. I just wanted to mention too that, so I have my regular page, then I also have an author page, but something that I started 9 years ago when we walked through our first separation for a year. We were separated about almost 10 years ago now. And then I created these verse cards because I just wanted to carry around some truth in my purse with me when I needed it. And when my youngest, the other two were older and they were out of the house by then, but my youngest was in junior high at the time. And we would just go through the cards like this, and whatever one we landed on was our verse for the day. And I said, I want you to think about it. And then when I pick you up, we'll talk about how God used this. It was just going to be something for me. And it has grown into now a Facebook group called Verse of the Week. And I go in there, and I think there's 250 verses now on the verse card. And people just say number 43 or number 23 or number whatever. And they'll just say quick pick or whatever it is. And I post that. And what I love about how God works is they're like, Andi, God has been showing me this yay, you got it. God has been showing me this for weeks. known. And I said, it has nothing to do with me. I'm just being the vessel, or God is just using me. And last thing I'm going to throw out before I go is this, that, like I said, you don't have to be on this big stage or even write a book to have a ministry, right?
Yeah.
It's something simple as yesterday, I went out and had lunch with a friend. We just poured into each other. I Had another friend the other day saying, hey, I know you're walking through a hard time. My father currently is fighting for his life. He has lung cancer and we're dealing with that as a family. But she just said to me, how is your walk with God going? When you're experiencing all this grief, find those kind of women that will get in the pit with you and stand in the gap. The ministry that you can do is like sending me a text message, having lunch with a friend, doing the verse of the week, taking kids to church, to picking them up. If their parents don't take them, pick them up. It doesn't have to be every Sunday. But how about one Sunday a month? Take them to church. These are ways that we can still have a ministry, right? And even if it's just for a season, like God is having me still mourn, this is my season. This is the way I minister. Now, it doesn't need to be from a stage or a platform. You still have as much impact.
I just challenge you, not only find those women, but be those women.
Yes.
When you have opportunity in life, do just what you talked about earlier. Lift your eyes up, look out and about, try to be that woman for someone else, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love you, ladies, so much. And I hope to see you guys soon. And I'm so incredibly proud of you. And I pray blessings over your book and your lives, that they go in the right hands with the women that need them, and that it would continue to just make an influence.
Yes. Well, thank you, Andi, for blessing us today and blessing all the women who will listen to this podcast. So I appreciate that. You guys take care and give that little puppy a big, huge hug from us.
We want to stay with you for just a few more minutes here as Andi leaves the room. But we have an event coming up in the Kansas City area on July the 15th from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. It's at a coffee house called Ahadu. We're calling it our Leading Ladies Caffeinated Book Tour. We've joked from the beginning and said we want to do something different. Yes, book signings are fun. I'm sure they're exciting, but they're not our style. And so we're throwing this little event and asking you to join us. We're going to have some of our leading lady contributors there. Amber's going to drive up from Springfield. She's going to come up north a few hours. And we're going to meet at Ahadu Coffee in Lee Summit, Missouri. We're going to let our ladies share a little bit, those that will be participating. I'm going to read off who's coming. Let's see. We have myself and Amber. We have Veronica Clay, one of our chapter contributors. We have Jennifer Miller, another chapter contributor. We have Michaela Weaver, our songwriter who did our song to promote Reading Ladies, as well as her lyrics are printed inside the book. They're really meaningful. And we have a special guest, a leading lady within our local community, Anjali Avila. She is an amazing educator, and she is going to share with us about her own community and leading within it. We have an MC, a hostess with the mostest, Nina Hampton. And so we just ask that you join us on that. Amber, are you excited?
Yes, I am excited. So anybody who will be up in the Kansas City area, Lee Summit, you know what? Come as you are. We're not going to be fancy. Come in your messy buns. Come in your pajamas if you want to. We are 5:30 p.m. at night. I'm hoping you're You may want to get ladies from the youth group and pile them into your car. Yeah. We're going to have coffee available.
Maybe you've got a friend, maybe in the women's ministries department at your church or something like that. We'd love for you to be able to bring a friend, and we're going to be casual. We're going to have music. We're going to have the ladies talk. We'll have a little panel discussion towards the end, and Ahadu will be selling coffee and all of the wonderful coffee drinks. So come drink.
And we're going to have a few little goodies to give away to our ladies. I know. Goodies.
I know. And if you have a book already, please bring it. I would love for you to get to have our contributors sign their chapter. We'll have some books available too. That's the plan. But so many have already purchased in this area. If you have them, bring them with you. We'll sign them. We just want to celebrate. So join us.